Richard was a man who had everything that most people only dream about. He was a self-made millionaire, respected in the business world, admired in society, and seemingly living a life of perfection. He drove expensive cars, owned multiple houses, and dined at the finest restaurants. But behind the polished image of wealth and power, Richard carried a hidden wound that no amount of success could heal. Years ago, long before his empire was built, he had lost someone very dear to him, his firstborn son. It wasn't death that took the boy away, but circumstances far more painful. The boy's mother had left suddenly, taking the child with her, and despite Richard's desperate attempts to find them, every lead had gone cold. Over time, the trail vanished, leaving Richard with nothing but unanswered questions and a heart that ached in silence. He had buried the pain deep within himself, convincing the world and even himself that he had moved on. But in truth, he never did. The only light in his life now was his little daughter, Emily. She was just 6 years old, full of innocence and joy, and every smile from her reminded Richard that love was still possible. He devoted himself to her, shielding her from the sadness in his heart. But sometimes when Emily asked why she didn't have a brother or sister, Richard's eyes would darken, and he would quickly change the subject. He didn't have the courage to tell her the truth. One quiet afternoon, Richard decided to take Emily out for a walk through the city. The weather was mild, the streets alive with people, and Emily skipped happily beside her father, holding his hand. They stopped near a park where children were laughing, chasing each other and playing soccer on the grass. Emily loved watching other kids play, and she tugged at her father's sleeve, asking if they could stay for a while. Richard agreed, smiling at her enthusiasm, completely unaware that his entire life was about to change. As they stood by the park fence, Emily's eyes locked on one particular boy among the group. He was about 10 years old, tall for his age, with messy brown hair and eyes that seemed to sparkle even from a distance. Emily froze, her expression shifting from curiosity to shock. Then, with a sudden burst of emotion, she shouted words that made Richard's heart stop beating. "Daddy, that's my brother." Richard's entire body stiffened. For a moment he thought he had misheard her. "What did you say?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Emily pointed directly at the boy, her face glowing with certainty. "That's my brother, Daddy. I just know it." The words echoed in Richard's mind like thunder. His heart began to pound as he followed her gaze. The boy kicked the soccer ball with a grace that seemed strangely familiar. His smile, it was like looking into a reflection of his own childhood. Richard's legs felt weak, and the air seemed to vanish from his lungs. Memories he had spent years suppressing came rushing back all at once. Emily, full of childlike excitement, ran straight toward the boy. "Brother!" she called out, her small voice ringing through the park. The boy stopped mid-step, confused, staring at the little girl running toward him. His friends laughed, thinking it was just a game, but Emily wasn't joking. She stopped right in front of him, looked into his eyes, and said with complete innocence, "I'm your sister." The boy blinked, unsure how to respond, and glanced toward the bench nearby where an older woman was sitting. The woman had been watching everything unfold, and the moment her eyes met Richard's across the park, her face turned pale. She knew exactly who he was. She had known that one day this confrontation might happen, and now the day had come. Richard slowly walked forward, his heart racing with fear and hope all at once. When he reached the boy, his voice cracked as he asked, "What's your name, son?" The boy gave his name quietly, and with every syllable, Richard felt a surge of recognition, as if fate itself were confirming what Emily had already seen. Richard turned to the woman on the bench, his eyes filled with desperation. "Please," he begged, "tell me the truth. Who is this boy?" The woman lowered her head. She had been his late wife's sister, the one who had taken the boy in after his mother had died. For years she had raised him in silence, keeping him away from Richard out of fear of losing him. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she finally admitted, "He's your son. Your blood. We never told you because we were afraid. But yes, he's yours." The world around Richard collapsed. His chest tightened, his hands shook, and his vision blurred with tears. He dropped to his knees in front of the boy, struggling to find words. "Son," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I've been searching for you. I never stopped. I thought I lost you forever." The boy looked uncertain, torn between confusion and curiosity. He had grown up never knowing the truth about his father, hearing only fragments of stories from relatives. But now, as he stared at the man before him, there was no denying the resemblance. His heart told him what his mind struggled to accept. Emily, sensing the heavy silence, slipped her tiny hand into her brother's. She smiled brightly and said, "Don't be scared. Daddy will take care of us both. We're a family now." Those simple, innocent words broke the dam inside Richard. He couldn't hold back anymore. He wrapped his arms around both children, pulling them close, and sobbed like a man who had been holding back years of pain. Passers-by in the park stopped and stared, some even wiping their own eyes as they witnessed the raw, unfiltered reunion of a father and his lost child. For Richard, time seemed to stand still. The sounds of the park faded, the noise of the world disappeared, and all that mattered were the two small bodies he held against his chest. In that moment, he wasn't a millionaire. He wasn't a powerful man. He was just a father, broken but finally whole again. The boy hesitated for only a second before wrapping his arms around Richard in return. "Are you really my dad?" he whispered. Richard kissed his forehead, tears falling freely. "Yes, son, I am. And I promise I'll never let you go again." From that day forward, Richard's life was transformed. He welcomed his son into his home with open arms, determined to make up for the years they had lost. He didn't just provide him with wealth and comfort. He gave him the love of a father who had been waiting a lifetime to hold him. Emily was overjoyed to finally have the brother she had always dreamed of. Together, the two children filled the house with laughter, turning it into a true home. Richard often reflected on how it all happened. It wasn't business deals or money that brought his family together. It wasn't his power or influence. It was the innocent heart of his little daughter, who had recognized her brother without hesitation and declared it to the world. "Daddy, that's my brother." Those words had changed everything, and so, the millionaire who once carried a silent emptiness in his soul now felt richer than ever, not because of his fortune, but because fate had given him a second chance at family. Whenever he looked at Emily and his son playing together, he realized he had finally found what he had been missing all along. True wealth was not measured in gold, but in the love of those who share your blood, your name, and your heart.